Asian literature, China, India, Japan. Asian literature refers to the literature that was written over a period of thousands of years in a variety of countries in Asia. Asian literature encompasses East Asian literature that includes Chinese, Japanese, and Korean literature. Central Asian literature comprising of Bengali, Indian, Pakistani, and Tamil literature. West Asian literature that covers Arabic literature, Persian literature, and Turkish literature, and Southeast Asian literature that is comprised of literature of the Philippines. The study of the massive amount of Asian literature as a whole requires the aggregation of literature under specific headings. Asian literature can be divided into a host of different labels, categorized according to religion, zone, region, ethnic group, literary, genre, historical perspective, or language of origin. Literature of China. Chinese literature is one of the major literary heritage of the world, with an uninterrupted history of more than 3,000 years, dating back at least to the 14th century BCE. Its medium, the Chinese language, has retained its unmistakable identity in both its spoken and written aspects in spite of generally gradual change in pronunciation, the existence of regional and local dialects, and several stages in the structural representation of the written graphs or characters. Moment in Peking is a novel originally written in English by Chinese author Lin Yutang. The novel, Lin Spurs, covers the turbulent events in China from 1900s to 1938, including the Boxer Uprising, the Republican Revolution of 1911, the Warlord era, the rise of nationalism and communism, and the start of the Sino-Japanese War of 1937 to 1945. Lin wrote the book in English for a US audience, yet he based it in Chinese literature and philosophy. As an exercise, before he started to compose Moment in Peking, Lin translated passage from the classic Chinese novel Dream of the Red Chamber, and followed its example in showing a spectrum of characters in their social settings and defining them through their clothing, jewelry, and footwear, and even by the language, dialect, geography, region, and foodways. Lin's eldest daughter, Lin Rusi, also indicates in an introductory essay to a Chinese translation of Moment in Peking that the entire book was influenced by Zhuangzi and its message was, "Life is but a dream."
Literature of India. Just like China, India has over 2 millennial old literary history. But unlike Chinese, earlier literary work which were either poetic or philosophical works, the earliest literary work in India were the Sanskrit sacred Vedic texts. Early Sanskrit literature. The first Indian literary work was a collection of Sanskrit hymns that was orally transmitted. The so-called Vedas, which were either sung or recited, are thought to have been composed as early as 1500 to 1200 BCE, but they were written down only at the end of the first millennium BCE, while the oldest Veda texts date to around 11th century. Prominent literary works in Sanskrit, of course, also include the famous Ramayana and the Mahabharata epic poem, which are true to have been created sometime between the 6th and 1st century BCE. Classical Sanskrit literature. Despite the fact that India is home to many different languages, religious importance of the earliest Sanskrit texts, and the influence of Sanskrit on many Indian languages enabled Sanskrit literature to flourish over 1 millennium. Unfortunately, most Sanskrit works from the so-called classical Sanskrit literature have been lost. The most prominent surviving Sanskrit literature from the classical period included the Abhijnanaka Sakuntalam by Kalidasa, Arthashastra and Nitashastra by Chanakya, Basavadatta by Subandhu and his son Skandagupta, Dasha Kumarat Charita by Dadin, and of course Kama Sutra by Vatshashana.
Medieval Indian literature. With the exception of South India, where Tamil literature has been produced from the ancient times, medieval Indian literature remains strongly influenced by the Sanskrit literature. However, literary works that were created between the 11th and early 19th century also reveal a major influence of Buddhism in Jain works. At the same time, Sanskrit gradually gave way to the Prakrit language, especially in Buddhism and Jain texts, as well as other common Indian language. The Muslim invasion from the early 8th century onward, and of course the arrival of the British, also left their mark on the Indian literature. The period following the decline of the classic Sanskrit literature until the mid-19th century was dominated by the so-called Bhakti or devotional poetry in all Indian language. Modern Indian literature. The period of the modern Indian literature starts with the first movement for independence in the mid-19th century. The early modern Indian literature, however, was greatly influenced by both adoption of the Western thoughts and ideas on the one hand and their rejection on the other. The period between the mid-19th and mid-20th century thus saw the rise of a large number of literary works which often incorporated both the elements of Sanskrit and Western literature. The 20th century also saw the emergence of the Indian English literature, which refers to the literary works that are written by Indian authors in English language. Most famous Indian author of the modern era includes the Nobel laureates Rabindranath Tagore and B.S. Naipaul, R.K., Narayan Sarath, Chandra Chattopadhyay, Salman Rushdie, Mahadevi Barman, Arundhati Roy, and Kiran Desai, to mention only the few.
Literature of Japan. Japanese literature spanned a period of almost 2 millennia and comprises one of the major literatures the world comparable to English literature in age and scope. It comprises a number of genres including novels, poetry, and drama, travel use, personal diaries, and collection of random thoughts and impressions. During the Edo period, the rise of an urban middle class, increased literacy, and the importation of Chinese vernacular literature simulated the development of a number of new genres such as kabuki theater, comedy, historical romance, known as yumihon, horror crime stories, and morality stories. When Japan reopened its sports to Western trading and diplomacy in the 19th century, exposure to Western literature influenced Japanese authors to develop more subjective, analytical style of writing. Today, Japanese literature of all periods is enjoyed by modern readers all over the world who can relate to the sentiments and expression of emotion which cultural difference and historical distance. The Aged Mother by Matsuo Basho. It is also known as the story of the Aged Mother. This Japanese folktale tells the story of an unkind ruler who issues cruel orders, including one demand that all old folks are to be abandoned and left to die. Basho tells a poignant story about a mother and her son and their love for one another.